The massive crystal chamber hummed with ancient energy as 12 distinct forms of life gathered around the circular assessment table. Each representative embodied millions of years of evolution from their respective worlds, yet none had ever witnessed what was about to unfold in the next few hours. Ambassador Thane's crystalline body refracted the chamber's blue light into countless rainbows as he activated the holographic display system. His species, the Valori, had overseen galactic assessments for over 50,000 years, and today marked evaluation number 47,832 in the Universal Database. The routine had become almost mechanical over the millennia. Fellow Council members, we gather today to classify the newest sapient species discovered in Sector 7742. Thane announced, his voice resonating through harmonic frequencies that each species could understand. The beings call themselves humans, and they inhabit the third planet of a yellow star system they designate as Sol. Dr. Emma Wright sat in the observation chamber, her heart racing as she watched the proceedings through reinforced transparent aluminum. As humanity's first ambassador to reach this level of galactic politics, she understood the weight of this moment. Everything humanity had ever dreamed about their place among the stars would be decided in this room. The holographic display materialized above the table, showing Earth in stunning detail. Continents shifted slowly as the planet rotated, revealing cities that sparkled like jewels against the dark oceans. To Emma, it looked beautiful and peaceful, but she knew the Council would see much more than surface appearances. Initial scans reveal a technologically advancing civilization with nuclear capabilities, reported Ambassador Krell, whose insectoid form clicked rhythmically as he spoke. They have achieved basic spaceflight and have begun exploring their immediate planetary neighbors. Standard progression markers, noted Ambassador Yura, her gaseous form shifting colors as she processed the data. What concerns me are the atmospheric readings. Significant pollution levels indicate industrial activity without proper environmental safeguards. Thane manipulated the display, zooming in on various regions of Earth. Cities appeared and disappeared, as time-lapse imagery showed human development over the past century. Emma watched in growing horror as the presentation revealed humanity's darkest moments in stark, clinical detail. Observe their conflict patterns, Thane continued, highlighting areas where wars had raged. In their most recent 200-year period, they have engaged in over 150 major conflicts, including 2 global wars that claimed over 100 million lives combined. Ambassador Nex, a being of pure energy contained within a geometric framework, pulsed with concern. The timeline is troubling. They developed nuclear fission and immediately weaponized it, using it against their own species within the same decade of discovery. Furthermore, added Ambassador Trill, whose aquatic form floated in a specialized chamber, they continue to maintain arsenals capable of destroying their entire planet multiple times over, despite being aware of the consequences. Emma wanted to stand up and defend her species, to explain the complexities of human nature and the capacity for growth and change that made humanity special. But she had no voice in these proceedings. She could only watch as her species was dissected and analyzed like specimens in a laboratory. The data streams continued flowing across the holographic display. Population statistics, resource consumption rates, extinction data for other Earth species, and detailed analyses of human social structures painted a picture that grew darker with each revelation. Their expansion patterns suggest aggressive tendencies, observed Ambassador Quinn, whose plant-like form rustled with each word. They have consistently displaced or eliminated competing species on their planet, and their resource extraction methods show no regard for long-term sustainability. What about their cultural development? Asked Ambassador Roth, the eldest member of the Council. His ancient, stone-like form had witnessed the classification of thousands of species over his extended lifetime. Thane adjusted the display to show human art, literature, and music. For a brief moment, Emma felt hope as beautiful creations from every corner of Earth filled the chamber with color and sound. Beethoven's symphonies played alongside images of the Sistine Chapel, while poetry from every culture scrolled past in holographic text. Remarkable creative capacity, admitted Ambassador Yura. Their artistic achievements show significant emotional depth and intellectual complexity. However, Thane interjected, manipulating the display once more, observe how frequently their cultural expressions center around themes of conflict, dominance, and violence. Even their entertainment media glorifies warfare and aggression. The chamber fell silent as the council members processed the complete picture of humanity. Emma could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on her like a physical force. These beings, representing the pinnacle of galactic civilization, were deciding the fate of every human who had ever lived or would ever be born. The evidence is overwhelming, declared Ambassador Krell. This species exhibits all the primary indicators of dangerous aggressive expansion tendencies. They have nuclear capabilities, demonstrated willingness to use weapons against their own kind, and shown no signs of developing beyond their primitive territorial instincts. Their environmental destruction patterns suggest they will eventually exhaust their home planet's resources, added Ambassador Trill. Historical data indicates such species typically seek expansion to other worlds through conquest rather than cooperation. Ambassador Roth's ancient voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. In my extended lifetime, I have observed this pattern before. Species that develop advanced technology while retaining primitive aggressive instincts become threats to galactic stability. Emma felt tears streaming down her face as she realized where this was heading. The council was building a case for humanity's classification as a Category Red species, the most dangerous designation in galactic law. Only 3 species in the history of the galaxy had ever received this classification, and all 3 were now extinct. We must consider the potential consequences of allowing this species unrestricted development, Thane said solemnly. If they achieve interstellar travel capabilities while maintaining their current behavioral patterns, they could pose a significant threat to peaceful civilizations throughout this sector. The voting process began with ceremonial gravity. Each council member would cast their decision based on comprehensive analysis of humanity's development, behavior patterns, and potential future trajectory. Emma watched in growing despair as one by one, each representative voiced their conclusion. The Valori classify this species as Category Red, Thane announced first. The Hexer Collective concurs, Category Red, clicked Ambassador Krell. The Aquatic Federation agrees. Category Red, bubbled Ambassador Trill. The pattern continued around the table. Ambassador after ambassador reached the same conclusion based on the evidence presented. Emma realized that humanity's fate had been sealed not by malice or prejudice, but by cold, logical analysis of their species' history and behavior. When the final vote was cast, the decision was unanimous. Humanity had joined the ranks of the galaxy's most dangerous species, subject to immediate quarantine protocols and potential elimination if they proved too great a threat to galactic peace. As the council session concluded and the massive chamber began to empty, Emma sat alone in the observation deck, staring at the holographic image of Earth that still rotated slowly above the assessment table. Her beautiful blue homeworld would soon be surrounded by alien technology designed to keep humanity trapped within their own solar system, possibly forever. 6 months had passed since the classification, and the first signs of humanity's new reality appeared as bright dots of light beyond Neptune's orbit. The massive alien structures grew larger each day, visible even through Earth's most basic telescopes as they assembled what would become humanity's cosmic prison. Commander Alex Torres gripped the armrest of his chair as the diplomatic vessel ISS Endeavour approached the construction zone. Through the bridge's main viewport, he could see alien ships working with technologies that defied human understanding. Materials seemed to bend space itself as they were woven into patterns that hurt to look at directly. Commander, we're receiving a communication signal, reported Communications Officer Beth Lane from her station. It's coming from the largest vessel in the construction fleet. Put it through, Beth, Alex replied, straightening his uniform. This would be humanity's first official contact with the species enforcing their quarantine. Everything he said in the next few minutes could determine whether humanity had any hope of changing their situation. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a being unlike anything in humanity's wildest science fiction. Captain Vorth stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and skin that seemed to shift between different metallic colors. His face possessed 2 sets of eyes. One pair focused on immediate surroundings, while the other appeared to see something far beyond the physical realm. Human vessel, I am Captain Vorth of the Enforcement Division, commanding the Containment Fleet Stellar Guard. The alien said in perfect English, though his voice carried harmonics that no human throat could produce. You will maintain your current distance while we complete construction of the barrier system. Captain Vorth, I am Commander Torres, representing the United Earth Government, Alex responded carefully. We request permission to discuss the terms of our species classification and the possibility of reconsidering the quarantine decision. Vorth's upper set of eyes focused intently on the human commander, while his lower eyes continued monitoring other displays. There are no terms to discuss, Commander Torres. The Galactic Assessment Council has classified your species as Category Red based on comprehensive analysis of your behavioral patterns and development trajectory. But surely there must be some way to demonstrate that humanity can change, Alex pressed. We've already begun implementing global peace initiatives and environmental restoration programs. Commander, you misunderstand the nature of Category Red classification, Vorth replied, his tone neither cruel nor kind, simply factual. This designation is not punishment for past actions but prevention of future threats. Your species exhibits fundamental characteristics that pose dangers to galactic civilization. The alien captain manipulated controls that Alex couldn't see, and suddenly the Endeavor's sensors were filled with detailed schematics of the barrier system being constructed around Earth's solar system. The scope of the project was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. The containment field will prevent any human vessel from leaving your solar system, Vorth explained as the diagrams rotated slowly. Additionally, it will dampen your electromagnetic communications to prevent cultural contamination of nearby civilizations. No alien vessel will be permitted to enter your system without council authorization. Alex stared at the schematics in growing horror. The barrier wasn't just a fence. It was a complete isolation system that would cut humanity off from the galaxy indefinitely. Captain, you're condemning our entire species to permanent imprisonment for crimes we haven't committed. Not imprisonment, Commander. Protection, Vorth corrected. Protection for the galaxy against your species' potential for destruction. And protection for your species against the response such destruction would provoke from defensive civilizations. How long will this quarantine last? Asked Dr. Lisa Park, the mission's chief scientist. Speaking for the first time, Vorth's 4 eyes all focused on her simultaneously, creating an unsettling effect. Dr. Park, the containment will remain in place until your species either demonstrates fundamental behavioral evolution that eliminates the threat classification or until natural extinction occurs. Natural extinction? Alex felt his voice rising despite his efforts to remain diplomatic. You're talking about waiting for humanity to die out? Commander of the 3 previous Category Red species in galactic history, 2 destroyed themselves through internal conflict within 50 years of classification, Vorth explained matter-of-factly. The 3rd attempted to break containment, using weapons of mass destruction, and was eliminated by defensive protocols. The bridge of the Endeavor fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had been classified alongside species so dangerous that they had all ended up extinct. The galaxy expected humans to follow the same path, either destroying themselves or forcing the galactic community to destroy them. Captain Vorth, Alex said slowly, what would it take for humanity to prove we're not a threat? For the first time, something that might have been sympathy crossed the alien's features. Commander, no Category Red species has ever successfully changed their classification. The behavioral patterns that lead to this designation appear to be fundamental aspects of species development that cannot be altered. But theoretically, Dr. Park interjected, what would the Council need to see? Vorth considered her question for several long moments. Complete elimination of internal conflicts, sustainable resource management, technological advancement without weapons development, and demonstrated peaceful cooperation across your entire species for a minimum period of 50 standard years. Alex and his crew exchanged glances. What Vorth described sounded impossible based on human history. Humanity had never gone more than a few years without some form of armed conflict, and the idea of achieving global cooperation seemed like fantasy. Additionally, Vorth continued, your species would need to show technological advancement beyond current galactic standards without developing any applications that could be used for warfare or aggression. This has never been achieved by any species in galactic history. So you're saying it's impossible, Alex concluded. I'm saying it is unprecedented, Vorth replied. The barrier construction will be completed in 37 days. After that point, your solar system will be completely isolated from galactic civilization until one of the previously mentioned conditions is met. The communication ended abruptly, leaving the crew of the Endeavour staring at the massive construction project that would soon trap their entire species. The alien ships continued their work with mechanical precision, each piece of the barrier system fitting perfectly into a design that human science couldn't begin to understand. During the return journey to Earth, Alex and his crew processed what they had learned. The quarantine wasn't temporary or negotiable. Humanity had been judged and found wanting by civilizations with millions of years of experience. The galaxy was building a cage around Earth and expected humanity to either reform completely or destroy itself trying. News of the mission's results spread across Earth within hours of the Endeavour's return. The reaction was swift and devastating. Stock markets collapsed as investors realized that humanity's dreams of galactic trade and expansion were over. Governments fell as populations demanded answers that their leaders couldn't provide. Riots broke out in major cities as people struggled to comprehend their species. Cosmic isolation, but something unexpected began happening in the days following the announcement. As the initial panic subsided, a different kind of response emerged. Religious leaders from every faith began preaching unity and cooperation. Scientists started sharing research freely across national boundaries. Former enemies began discussing peace treaties and resource-sharing agreements. Dr. Emma Wright, watching from the lunar observation station where she had remained since the Council's decision, noticed the change first. It's remarkable, she told her research team as they monitored global communications. Faced with ultimate isolation, humanity is actually starting to come together. The barrier construction continued overhead, visible now as a faint shimmer that grew stronger each night. But below on Earth, something that had never happened in human history was beginning to take shape. The knowledge that they were alone in the cosmic dark, cut off from the galaxy by their own reputation, was forcing humanity to confront fundamental questions about what kind of species they wanted to be. Former President Maria Santos, now leading the newly formed Global Unity Initiative, addressed the world as the barrier neared completion. We have been judged by the galaxy and found lacking, she said simply. We can accept this judgment and prove them right by destroying ourselves, or we can prove them wrong by becoming something better than we have ever been before. The choice, she explained, was humanity's alone to make. The emergency session of the United Nations had been transformed into something entirely unprecedented in human history. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat together in the assembly hall, but for the first time since the organization's founding, no one was arguing about territorial disputes or resource allocation. Above them, the alien barrier was now complete, casting Earth in a faint blue glow that reminded everyone of their shared imprisonment. President Maria Santos stood at the podium, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall and simultaneously broadcast to every human settlement from the Arctic research stations to the International Space Station. Fellow humans, we face a choice that no species in galactic history has ever confronted. We can prove our captors right by destroying ourselves. through internal conflict, or we can prove them wrong by becoming something they never expected. The response was immediate and shocking. Within 24 hours, every active military conflict on Earth had ceased. Not through victory or defeat, but through voluntary ceasefire agreements as former enemies recognized the futility of fighting. While trapped in cosmic isolation, the Korean Peninsula saw its first complete peace in over 70 years. Middle Eastern nations began dismantling weapons systems and redirecting military budgets toward humanitarian aid. Dr. Tom Bradley had spent his entire career studying fusion energy, but he had always worked within the constraints of national security classifications and corporate competition. Now, sitting in what had formerly been the Pentagon's most secure laboratory, he found himself collaborating with scientists from every nuclear power on Earth, sharing research that had been classified for decades. The theoretical framework the Chinese team developed for magnetic containment could solve our plasma stability issues, he told his international colleagues via quantum encrypted video conference. And the Russian breakthrough in superconducting materials could make the whole system economically viable. Within 6 months of the barrier's completion, humanity achieved something that had taken other galactic civilizations centuries to develop. Clean fusion reactors began providing unlimited energy to every nation on Earth, but unlike the competitive development that had characterized human technological advancement for millennia, this breakthrough was immediately shared freely among all nations. The alien monitoring stations embedded within the barrier detected the energy signatures and transmitted automated reports to the Galactic Assessment Council. Ambassador Thane reviewed the data with growing puzzlement as he prepared his monthly status report on the contained Category Red species. The humans have achieved stable fusion without developing weapons applications, he reported to the Council's quarterly session. This contradicts established Category Red species development. Monitoring error, suggested Ambassador Krell dismissively. Category Red species always weaponize new energy sources. Verify your sensor calibrations. But the sensors were functioning perfectly. As months passed, the reports from Earth became increasingly difficult to explain within established galactic frameworks for understanding dangerous species. Human settlements on Mars and the outer planets had stopped competing for resources and instead began sharing infrastructure and research. The asteroid mining operations that had been developing into territorial disputes were reorganized as cooperative ventures with profits shared equally among all participants. Dr. Ina Reeves had been working on consciousness transfer research for the military applications of enhanced soldier capabilities. After the barrier's completion, she redirected her research toward medical applications, specifically helping paralyzed individuals regain mobility through neural interface technology. Her breakthrough came not through military funding but through collaboration with researchers from 17 different countries who had previously been classified as potential enemies. We've successfully transferred complex motor functions through the neural interface, she announced to the global medical community. Paralyzed patients can now control robotic bodies with the same precision as their original limbs. The technology spread across Earth within weeks, freely shared through the new global research network that had replaced the compartmentalized scientific communities of the past. But what truly shocked the monitoring systems was what happened next. Instead of using the consciousness transfer technology to create enhanced soldiers or develop military applications, humanity began using it to share experiences directly between individuals. Artists could share the exact sensation of creating a masterpiece. Musicians could transmit the emotional experience of composing a symphony. Scientists could share the moment of breakthrough discovery. For the first time in human history, individuals could truly understand what it felt like to be someone else. The breakthrough that changed everything happened in Dr. Bradley's laboratory 18 months after the quarantine began. While working on improvements to the fusion reactors, his team discovered how to manipulate gravitational fields at the quantum level. The applications were immediate and revolutionary. Transportation systems that had relied on fossil fuels for over a century were replaced overnight with gravity-based vehicles that produced no emissions and required minimal energy. We can generate localized gravitational fields strong enough to lift entire cities, Dr. Bradley explained to the Global Science Council. But more importantly, we can use these fields to begin repairing the environmental damage from centuries of industrial development. The gravitational manipulation technology was immediately applied to environmental restoration. Polluted oceans were cleaned by generating gravity wells that separated contaminants from water. Atmospheric carbon dioxide was extracted using gravitational concentration and converted into useful materials. Damaged ecosystems were restored by precisely controlling water flow and soil composition. Ambassador Thane reviewed the latest monitoring reports with increasing confusion. The humans have achieved gravitational manipulation without developing gravity weapons, he told the council. They are using the technology exclusively for environmental restoration and transportation. Impossible, declared Ambassador Quinn. Gravitational manipulation is the most dangerous technology possible. Every species that develops it immediately creates gravitational weapons capable of destroying planets. Yet the humans have not, Thane insisted. Furthermore, their rate of technological advancement is accelerating beyond any recorded precedent. They have achieved in 24 months what most civilizations require centuries to develop. The most disturbing report came in the third year of quarantine. Humanity had developed biotechnology that could extend lifespans indefinitely, cure any disease, and enhance cognitive abilities far beyond natural limits. But instead of creating a class system based on access to enhancement, they had implemented global distribution systems ensuring that every human had equal access to the technology. Dr. Sarah Kim, leading the biotechnology development team, addressed the Global Health Assembly with news that should have terrified any galactic observer familiar with Category Red species behavior. We have successfully mapped and can now control every aspect of human biological function, she announced. Disease, aging, and genetic limitations are now optional rather than inevitable. But humanity's response to unlimited biological enhancement capabilities defied every prediction in galactic behavioral models. Instead of using the technology to create super soldiers or enhanced warrior classes, humans began using it to develop greater empathy, enhanced cooperative instincts, and improved capacity for peaceful conflict resolution. The monitoring stations detected brain pattern changes across the entire human population as the biotechnology enhancements spread. Aggression responses decreased dramatically while cooperative impulses strengthened. Fear responses to other groups diminished while protective instincts toward all humans increased. Most remarkably, the competitive drives that had fueled human conflict for millennia were being voluntarily modified to focus on collaborative achievement. Ambassador Thane found himself in the unprecedented position of filing reports that contradicted everything the galactic community understood about dangerous species development. The Category Red species is voluntarily altering their fundamental behavioral patterns, he reported to an increasingly skeptical council. They are using advanced biotechnology to eliminate the aggressive tendencies that led to their classification. Category Red species do not voluntarily reduce their aggressive capabilities, Ambassador Roth stated with the authority of millennia of experience. They enhance them until they destroy themselves or force defensive intervention. Yet that is not what these humans are doing, Thane replied. They are systematically eliminating every characteristic that made them dangerous while accelerating their technological development beyond any recorded precedent. The fourth year of quarantine brought reports that finally forced the Council to acknowledge that something unprecedented was occurring within the barrier around Earth's solar system. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light communication, matter, transportation, and energy manipulation at the quantum level. But instead of using these capabilities to attempt escape or develop weapons, they were using them to create art forms and entertainment experiences that transcended anything previously imaginable. Musicians were composing symphonies that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Artists were creating sculptures from controlled quantum fluctuations that told stories through direct consciousness interface. Writers were crafting narratives that could be experienced from the perspective of every character simultaneously. Most disturbing of all, humanity had begun to understand the principles behind the barrier technology itself. Not through reverse engineering or espionage, but through pure theoretical advancement that allowed them to comprehend technologies that had taken galactic civilization millions of years to develop. The reports concluded with a statement that sent shockwaves through the council chambers. The contained category red species now possesses the theoretical knowledge necessary to breach the containment barriers. However, they show no indication of attempting to do so. Instead, they appear to be developing technologies and capabilities that exceed current galactic standards, while maintaining complete peaceful cooperation across their entire species. For the first time in galactic history, a category red species had not only survived containment but had used it as an opportunity to transcend the limitations that had made them dangerous in the first place. The question now facing the Council was whether humanity's transformation was genuine, or simply a more sophisticated form of the threat they had originally posed. The breakthrough came at exactly 1432 Greenwich Mean Time on a Tuesday that would forever change the relationship between humanity and the galaxy. Dr. Anna Reeves stood in her laboratory beneath the Swiss Alps, staring at readings that should have been impossible according to every established law of physics she had studied for the past 3 decades. "Tom, you need to see this immediately," she called to Dr. Bradley, who was working on quantum field equations in the adjacent chamber. "The harmonic resonance patterns we've been tracking in the barrier aren't just containment frequencies. They're communication protocols." Dr. Bradley rushed to her workstation, his eyes widening as he processed the data streaming across her screens. The alien barrier that had imprisoned humanity for 4 years wasn't simply a wall of energy. It was a complex network of quantum communication channels that connected every major civilization in the galaxy. "They're using quantum entanglement principles we've only theorized about," Dr. Bradley whispered, running calculations on his handheld device. "But if we can match the resonance frequencies precisely, we should be able to create temporary windows in the barrier matrix." The implications were staggering. Humanity had not only figured out how to potentially escape their cosmic prison, but they had done so through pure scientific advancement rather than weapons development. The discovery represented the culmination of 4 years of unprecedented cooperation and technological growth. Within 72 hours, every major scientific institution on Earth was contributing to Project Window, the crash program to create controlled breaches in the containment field. The work proceeded with the same spirit of global cooperation that had characterized all human advancement since the quarantine began. No nation claimed ownership of the technology, no corporation sought to patent the discoveries, and no military organization attempted to weaponize the breakthrough. President Santos convened the Global Leadership Council to address the momentous decision facing humanity. Representatives from every nation, major corporation, and scientific institution gathered in the newly constructed Unity Hall in Geneva, a building that had been designed specifically for humanity's first truly global government. "We now possess the capability to escape our imprisonment," President Santos announced to the assembled leaders and to the billions watching the broadcast worldwide. "The question before us is not whether we can break free, but whether we should. And if so, how we choose to reveal ourselves to the galaxy." The debate that followed was unlike any political discussion in human history. There were no partisan divisions, no national interests taking precedence over global concerns, and no military leaders advocating for aggressive action. Instead, the conversation focused entirely on how humanity could best demonstrate their transformation to the civilizations that had judged them too dangerous to exist alongside peaceful species. Dr. Emma Wright, now serving as Earth's chief ambassador for galactic relations, presented the proposal that would define humanity's next step into the cosmic community. "We don't attempt escape," she said simply. "Instead, we invite them in." The proposal was elegant in its simplicity and revolutionary in its implications. Rather than using their breakthrough to flee the quarantine, humanity would use it to create controlled openings in the barrier that would allow them to transmit communications directly to the Galactic Assessment Council. But these would not be desperate pleas for freedom or threats of retaliation. Instead, humanity would share the story of their transformation. The project required unprecedented coordination across every aspect of human civilization. Artists, musicians, scientists, philosophers, and ordinary citizens from every corner of the Earth contributed to creating a comprehensive portrait of what humanity had become during their years of isolation. The transmission began with music, not the martial compositions or competitive performances that had characterized human culture for millennia, but collaborative symphonies created by musicians from every nation working together. The melodies told the story of humanity's journey from discord to harmony, from competition to cooperation, from isolation to unity. Visual artists contributed works that could only have been created through the consciousness-sharing technology that humanity had developed. Paintings that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, sculptures that told stories through quantum fluctuations, and holographic displays that allowed viewers to experience the emotions and thoughts of the creators directly. Scientists shared their discoveries not as proprietary secrets or national advantages, but as gifts to galactic civilization. The breakthrough in fusion technology was presented with complete technical specifications and implementation guides. The gravitational manipulation systems were offered freely to any civilization that could benefit from environmental restoration capabilities. The biotechnology advances were shared as tools for eliminating suffering throughout the galaxy. But the most powerful part of the transmission was the honest documentation of humanity's history and transformation. Rather than hiding their violent past or making excuses for their destructive tendencies, humans presented their complete story with unflinching honesty. The wars, the environmental destruction, the weapons of mass destruction, and the competitive drives that had nearly destroyed their civilization were all included in the transmission. More importantly, the transmission showed how humanity had changed. Global conflict statistics demonstrated 4 years of complete peace not through oppression or conquest, but through voluntary cooperation. Environmental restoration data showed a planet healing from centuries of damage through technologies applied with unprecedented global coordination. Population health metrics revealed the elimination of poverty, hunger, and preventable disease through resource sharing that defied every historical precedent for human behavior. The transmission concluded with a simple message recorded by children from every nation on Earth, speaking in 100 different languages but expressing the same sentiment. We were dangerous because we were afraid. We were afraid because we were alone. Now we know we are not alone, and we are not afraid, and we want to share what we have learned with everyone among the stars. The quantum windows in the barrier held stable for exactly 72 hours, long enough for the complete transmission to reach the council chambers and propagate throughout galactic communication networks. Then, as suddenly as they had opened, the windows closed, leaving humanity once again contained within their solar system, but no longer isolated from galactic attention. The response was immediate and unprecedented. Within days, alien monitoring stations detected massive increases in communication traffic throughout the galaxy as civilizations discussed the transmissions from the quarantine system. The content was being analyzed, debated, and distributed across hundreds of worlds. Ambassador Thane found himself at the center of the greatest controversy in galactic political history. The transmissions from Earth had not only reached the Council, but had been intercepted and distributed by countless civilizations throughout the galaxy. For the first time in galactic history, ordinary citizens of established civilizations were demanding to know why a species capable of such remarkable achievements was being held in isolation. The category Red species has achieved something we believed impossible, Thane reported to an emergency session of the Council. They have fundamentally altered their nature while under containment. More significantly, they have chosen to share their achievements rather than use them for escape or retaliation. It could be an elaborate deception, insisted Ambassador Krell. a sophisticated attempt to manipulate our emotions and gain freedom to pursue their true aggressive agenda. For 4 years? Challenged Ambassador Yira. They have maintained this supposed deception while achieving technological advancement that exceeds our own capabilities in several areas. If this is deception, it represents a level of planning and execution that would make them more dangerous than we initially assessed. The debate that followed shook the foundations of galactic governance. Young members of species throughout the galaxy were questioning why their civilizations maintained barriers against cooperation and rapid advancement. The rapid technological progress that humanity had achieved through global collaboration was inspiring similar movements on dozens of worlds. But the most disturbing development for the Council was the growing recognition that humanity's transformation had revealed fundamental flaws in galactic civilization itself. The stable, peaceful societies that had existed for millions of years had achieved their stability through stagnation. The absence of conflict had also meant the absence of growth, innovation, and the kind of rapid advancement that humanity had demonstrated was possible. Ambassador Roth, the eldest member of the Council, finally spoke the truth that none of his colleagues wanted to acknowledge. We classified them as Category Red not because they were too dangerous to exist alongside other species, but because they were too dangerous to our way of life. They represent the potential for change that our civilizations have spent millennia avoiding. The revelation changed everything. Humanity hadn't been quarantined to protect the galaxy from human aggression. They had been isolated to protect galactic stagnation from human innovation. The barrier around Earth's solar system wasn't a prison. It was a cocoon that had allowed humanity to transform in ways that were impossible within the constraints of established galactic civilization. The question now facing the Council was whether they were prepared to allow that transformation to spread throughout the galaxy, or whether they would maintain the quarantine to preserve their ancient, stable, and increasingly obsolete way of life. The emergency session had been called after reports flooded in from across the galaxy that threatened to destabilize galactic civilization itself. Ambassador Thane stood before the council chamber, but for the first time in 50,000 years of Valori service to galactic order, he was preparing to recommend something that had never been done in the recorded history of the universe. Fellow council members, he began, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into patterns that seemed to dance with unusual intensity. We face a situation that requires us to fundamentally reconsider our understanding of dangerous species, classification, and galactic stability itself. The reports he presented painted a picture of unprecedented change spreading throughout galactic civilization. On the water world of Aquatica Prime, young members of Ambassador Trill's species were demanding their government explain why they had maintained isolated underwater cities for millions of years instead of pursuing the kind of global cooperation that had allowed humanity to achieve faster-than-light communication in just 4 years. Our youth are abandoning the traditional separation protocols, Ambassador Trill reported with visible distress. They claim that if a Category Red species can achieve such technological advancement through cooperation, our isolation policies are holding back our civilization's development. Similar reports came from every represented civilization. The gaseous beings of the Nebula Collective were experimenting with consciousness, sharing technologies inspired by human developments. The insectoid Hexer were questioning their rigid caste system after observing humanity's elimination of class-based inequality. Even the ancient stone beings of Ambassador Roth's homeworld were experiencing something unprecedented, demands for change from citizens, who had been content with stagnation for millions of years. The contamination effect we feared from human contact has occurred without any direct interaction, Ambassador next pulsed with electromagnetic distress. Their transmissions have inspired revolutionary thinking across hundreds of civilizations. The stability we have maintained for eons is crumbling. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. The youngest member of the Council, Ambassador Zara of the recently ascended Crystalline Collective, stood to address the assembly with a perspective that challenged everything the older civilizations had accepted as truth. "Honored elders," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated with hope rather than fear, "we have spent this session discussing contamination and revolutionary thinking as threats to be contained. But what if we have misunderstood the fundamental nature of what we are witnessing?" She activated the chamber's display system, showing comparative data that painted a startling picture of galactic development over the past million years. Our civilizations achieved stability by eliminating change. We ended conflict by ending growth. We preserved peace by accepting stagnation. In the 4 years since humanity's quarantine began, they have advanced further than most of our species have. In the past 1,000 years, the data was undeniable. While galactic civilizations had maintained the same technologies, social structures, and living standards for millennia, humanity had revolutionized every aspect of their existence while maintaining complete peace and cooperation. Their approach challenged the fundamental assumption that stability and progress were mutually exclusive. Ambassador Roth's ancient form shifted in recognition of a truth he had been avoiding. "You are suggesting that our classification system is flawed," he rumbled. "That Category Red designation was based on our fear of change rather than genuine threat assessment." "I am suggesting more than that," Ambassador Zara replied. "I am suggesting that humanity represents not a threat to galactic civilization, but its next evolutionary step. They have achieved what we believed impossible: rapid advancement without destruction, unity without oppression, and innovation without warfare." The chamber fell silent as the implication sank in. For millions of years, galactic civilization had operated on the principle that dangerous species were those that changed too quickly, grew too fast, and innovated too freely. But humanity had proven that rapid change could lead to greater peace and cooperation than the stagnation that characterized established galactic society. Reports continued flowing in from monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. On the trade world of Commerce Prime, merchants were abandoning competitive pricing in favor of cooperative resource distribution inspired by humanity's economic model. The warrior culture of the Blade Worlds was experiencing unprecedented peace movements as their youth questioned the necessity of maintaining military traditions when humans had achieved security through cooperation rather than strength. "The transformation is accelerating," Ambassador Krell reported with a mixture of amazement and concern. "Civilizations that have maintained the same social and technological structures for millions of years are changing fundamental aspects of their societies based on transmissions from a quarantine system." Dr. Emma Wright received the Council's decision through the quantum communication array that humanity had built to monitor the barrier systems. The message was brief but contained implications that would reshape the relationship between Earth and the galaxy forever. "Dr. Wright," the transmission began in Ambassador Thane's harmonically complex voice, "the Galactic Assessment Council has reached a unanimous decision regarding humanity's classification and containment status. However, this decision requires explanation of unprecedented circumstances." The message continued with an admission that shook the foundations of galactic governance. "The Council acknowledges that humanity's Category Red classification was based on incomplete understanding of the relationship between rapid development and civilizational stability. Your species has demonstrated that accelerated growth and technological advancement can coexist with peace, cooperation, and social harmony. But the most significant part of the transmission was yet to come. Furthermore, the Council recognizes that humanity's isolation has inadvertently created conditions that allowed your species to develop solutions to problems that have limited galactic civilization for millions of years. Your achievements in consciousness sharing, environmental restoration, biotechnology, and cooperative governance represent advances that could benefit every civilization in the galaxy." The formal decision was announced simultaneously to humanity and to every civilization in galactic communication networks. Not only was humanity's quarantine being lifted, but Earth was being invited to join the Galactic Assessment Council as a full member. making humans the first species in galactic history to transition directly from Category Red to Council membership. President Santos addressed the world from Unity Hall as alien ships began dismantling the barrier systems that had surrounded Earth's solar system for 4 years. "Fellow humans," she said, her voice carrying to every settlement from Earth to the outer planets, "we have proven that our species can change, can grow, and can contribute to galactic civilization in ways no one thought possible." The first alien diplomatic mission to reach Earth since the quarantine began arrived 3 months after the barrier's removal. Ambassador Thane's crystalline form seemed somehow different as he stood in Unity Hall, addressing humanity's global leadership for the first time without prison walls between them. "Dr. Wright, President Santos, representatives of humanity," he said, his voice carrying new harmonics of respect and anticipation. "The Galactic Council extends formal invitation for Earth to establish permanent diplomatic relations and to contribute your expertise to addressing challenges that have limited galactic development for millennia." The ceremony that followed marked not just humanity's acceptance into galactic civilization, but the beginning of a new era for the galaxy itself. Human innovations in consciousness sharing were being adapted by species across the galaxy to improve understanding between different forms of life. The environmental restoration technologies that had healed Earth were being applied to damaged worlds throughout the galaxy. The cooperative governance models that had united humanity were inspiring political reforms on hundreds of planets. But perhaps the most profound change was in the galactic approach to species assessment itself. The Category Red classification was being completely reconsidered as the Council acknowledged that rapid change and innovation were not necessarily threats to be contained, but potentially gifts to be nurtured and shared. Ambassador Zara addressed the transformed Council chambers 6 months after humanity's integration, her words carrying throughout galactic communication networks to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. "The species we once feared for their capacity to change have taught us that change itself is not the enemy of peace, but potentially its greatest ally." The final entry in humanity's galactic classification file would be studied by xenobiologists and political scientists for generations to come. Where once the designation read Category Red Extreme Threat, the new classification carried a very different message. Category Omega, Evolutionary Catalyst. This species possesses the unprecedented ability to transform civilizational stagnation into cooperative advancement. Approach with open minds and prepared hearts. This species has the potential to fundamentally alter the nature of galactic civilization for the benefit of all sapient life. The universe will never be the same. Dr. Emma Wright stood on the observation deck of humanity's first interstellar diplomatic vessel as it approached the galactic capital for Earth's formal induction into the Council. Through the viewport she could see ships from hundreds of different civilizations, all gathering to witness the moment when the galaxy's most feared species became its newest hope for continued evolution and growth. The warning that had once surrounded humanity like a cosmic quarantine sign had become something entirely different, a promise that the galaxy was ready to embrace change, growth, and the endless potential that came from species willing to transform themselves and, in doing so, transform the universe itself.